Welcome back to the Owner Operator Podcast. This is Austin Gray, your host, and I have a very special guest, Christian Ruf, on the podcast. He is former 160th Division Nightstalker helicopter pilot. Super cool dude. Spent last weekend with he and, 10, 15 other guys at an event in Asheville, and it was awesome. He's working on a project called Uncommon Elite, where he pairs up special operations guys, ex-Navy SEALs, current Navy SEALs, helicopter pilots, basically all special forces, pairs those up with high performers, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and we go and do hard stuff together. So I won't spill the beans on everything that we did at the event, but it was basically just a lot of fun stuff where we challenged ourselves physically, mentally, did things as a group, worked on leadership skills. Christian shared some stories. Some other Navy SEALs shared some stories about leadership, and I had a lot of fun. So thanks for being on the podcast, Christian. We're just going to jump into a bunch of different topics here, but I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad you could make it last weekend.
Yeah, it was super fun. Anyways, tell me about that house in Telluride that you were just talking about.
Oh, yeah, I'll pull it up here. It's like, I think it sleeps 16 or 18. Let me just see. I got to pull it up now. Now I'm determined. Oh,
okay. So here's what we're thinking about while Christian's pulling this up. So I had so much fun at this event, and not only fun, it was challenging. Like, I left the event with so many different ideas and things to think about as a leader in our own small business, just personal development things to think about. So I was all amped up, and Christian was like, well, why don't we throw one in Colorado? And I just said, yeah, let's do it. So we are in the works of finding a spot in Telluride right now because we think that would be the coolest spot for it.
So I found one July 21st to 27th. It's sort of on the outskirts, so it's not in like the downtown, but it's not in Mountain Village. It's in Telluride. 12 guests, 4 bedrooms, 9 beds, 5 baths. I think it has a sauna. Dude, this thing is massive. I was wrong. It's 15 grand, 15,000. So everything's doable. You just got to figure out how to do it. I kind of want to book it, but my business credit card is currently maxed out with booking the other events we have coming up. So I gotta sell those ones first.
Nice. What is it? Is it 15 grand a night or 15 grand for the week?
15 grand for the whole week. So if we had 9 people, yeah, it's totally doable. You just gotta get 9 people. So
sweet. Well, let's work on it. For those of you who are listening to this episode, it's going to be this will be published several weeks after we kind of put the initial feelers out. But if you're listening to this episode and it is something that you're interested in, reach out to either one of us on Twitter. Some of you have probably already heard about Uncommon Elite, but for those of you who haven't, tell us about Uncommon Elite, Christian.
So it started. I started off of a tweet, man. Somebody, Clint Fiore, the business broker, your Twitter's very own business broker, was tweeting about how he had an accountability coach. And at that time, I was already doing some coaching, mostly with executive teams. And I saw that tweet, and I was like, and the people were piling on it. They wanted to learn more. They wanted accountability, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, interesting. Let me try something. And so I retweeted it and said, if you're looking for an accountability coach, I got plenty of dudes with really interesting backgrounds, special operators that I'd pair with, SEALs, Delta, Rangers, 160th, Green Berets. My network's pretty big in that regard, and I know guys who would love doing it. And so I retweeted it just for the fuck of it, and my DM started blowing up. And all of a sudden, all these people wanted some sort of form of accountability through working with a former former or current operator. And I was like, okay, interesting. There's something here. And so I leaned into it a little bit more. And what I realized is that accountability is one thing, coaching and development is an entirely different thing. And where my expertise is in development. And so for me to just go out and be like, hey, I'm going to give you accountability, didn't really sit well with me on like how I thought about this. But also at the time, I was seeing some traction. I was really getting back into coaching more, as becoming more full-time rather than just something I did on the side. And so I said, fuck it, let's just see what happens. And I had really no plans other than to just see what I could build, and it started growing. And so that was in July, and by, let's see, yeah, by January, we've got 18 individuals and 5 executive teams that we're working with. Actually, no, 19 individuals and 5 executive teams that we're working with. It's myself and one other guy. And where it's really going is I'm going to scale it more. But at the same time, some of my clients were asking, oh, can you do an event? And I was like, well, what do you want out of an event? Oh, I just want to meet your other clients. And I was like, interesting. And so I started connecting my clients, and they started talking because most of them have something in common or a way that they can build a relationship. And so I started connecting them. And what I realized is that there's this huge lack of a tribe. There's a huge lack of camaraderie. There's a huge lack of people in your corner. And I don't just want to be the only person that's in everybody's corner. I realized that my clients can be in each other's corner too. And as I said, okay, great, I'll do an event. And Austin, you just went to that event. And I had no expectation other than going in, doing some hard shit with some people, and just seeing what happened. What do you think happened?
Well, you and I were texting yesterday, and I think very simply put for me, like I played football in college, and I think it brought back some of those moments of camaraderie that I realized that I've just been missing in my life. Because like whenever you're in entrepreneurship, like it's really easy to get siloed out. Yeah. It's like I'm literally in a corner of my garage, and I'm up at 3 or 4 in the morning cranking out for 4 hours before my daughter gets up. And it's like I'm doing that. Sure, I'm talking with people on Slack, communicating with team members, coordinating schedules, sending out cold emails, things like that. But like, there's really no physical camaraderie to this portion of business. And I realized at that event, like, I missed that part of just being in the weight room with a bunch of other guys, throwing weight around, loud music going. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's because you're doing hard stuff with people who have a common goal. And so whenever we were there at that event, it just hit me. I was like, man, I miss this. And so, what you're putting together, I mean, very simply put, it's like, and dude, there was so much gold that came out of it too for everybody involved.
For me, I mean,
well, I remember at the very last day, like we were going to go do some hard stuff, and it was raining and whatnot. And then like good conversations started happening. And then it was like all this stuff started coming out around each person in the group. And I remember you walking up to Zach, and Zach like looked at you, and you guys like gave each other knuckles. It's like, this is what we're here for, right? Yeah. There was one event attendee who I consider a friend now, and I'm sure you do as well. And I'll keep his name private, but he asked a question like, he's like, dude, do you remember the specific question? It was something about like every day feeling like a wheel's falling off.
He's like, yeah. He's like, does anyone else here wake up in the morning and think like, I'm not gonna be able to pay my employees and I'm not gonna be able to feed their families? Like that was the gist of the question. And I think I was the first one to speak. I was like, I wake up every morning. I think all my clients are gonna fire me, and we're gonna have to go work for my in-laws and like all this shit. And it's just like everybody else was like, yeah, me too.
Yeah,
and here you have all these very successful people, including one notably like extraordinarily successful individual. Well, yeah, it's like it happens. And just remembering that and just realizing that, like, okay, everybody in this room, independently successful, like on paper and, you know, achievements, all that, like, yeah, there is that internal struggle, that internal angst. And it creates two types of people. It creates the type of people that just go and like deal with it and figure it out and they win. And then it creates the type of people who don't and get stuck or never take the leap or never grow because they're not accepting of like a level of fear. And I think what that weekend proved to me, and that I didn't even quite realize, was, dude, it's so much easier to go after those bigger things when you got other people in your corner.
It
and
is.
So I left the weekend thinking, man, Christian, you need to pony up here and do something. So I'm about to go book a house in Telluride for $15,000 and just be like, well, let's go figure it out.
Yeah. We can figure it out one way or the other. But yeah, I thought that was so cool, man, because I mean, even this week, that one guy and I have been talking back and forth, and it's just funny how like when you open up about that stuff, you immediately see that other people have the same types of struggles or uncertainty going on in their brain. And then whenever I think like at that point when everybody was like, yeah, I think about that every single day, it was like, okay, sweet. This is normal whenever you put yourself in these positions of entrepreneurship or leadership. And there's something about that just makes it easier to move forward whenever you know you have other people out there going through the same stuff and you can pick up the phone at any point. And hey, man, how'd you handle this? Here's what I'm doing right now. You know, I have X amount of team members. Somebody else may be a little bit further ahead and have gone through that situation before.
Yeah. So Uncommon Elite is quickly becoming, well, it's really like structurally, it's becoming two separate entities. There's the entity that is the coaching, and I'm going to grow that in a meaningful way. And then there's the entity that is the events community portion of it. And a question I've already gotten is, hey, is this a paid community? Like, if you have to pay to join, and no, you just have to come to one of the events. I think the way that we think about this is, in order to get into the community, for lack of a better word, or the tribe, or whatever you want to call it, you just got to come to one of the events. And I have absolutely no intention of doing some like monthly, community membership thing. I just don't think that is on brand for me or for what I want to build. So as a business, it's really just like the events business.
Cool. The other thing I would mention that I found some benefit from is, and I think I shared this with you, like leading up to it, we all get in our own routines. We all have like our own to-do lists and our own goals that we're chipping away at. And so like the several days leading up to then, I'm like, dang it. Like I got to get out of my morning routine. I got to, like go get a flight, like travel, do all that stuff. But like the second I got there and other people started coming in, it was very clear to me that, okay, this is going to be something that's very healthy. I'm going to be able to put the phone away.
Yeah.
I actually forgot my laptop charger, so I didn't even work while I was there, which was actually a great thing.
Perfect.
And yeah, I mean, just like to be able to like shift out of that day-to-day work mode was also a very healthy thing to do for several days, especially in a cool place like that.
Yep. Yeah, it's sort of a reset in a way. No, maybe not even reset, maybe a recalibration. Yeah, like I came out of that with more energy than I had before. And I think it's just by the virtue of being surrounded by other ambitious individuals because, dude, it's something I miss. And so yesterday, we got another one coming up in March 21st or 24th. It's in Hilton Head. Guy reaches out to me about wanting to come, hop on the call with him yesterday afternoon. And what he's sharing with me is like he's a very successful investment fund manager, also has a fractional CFO business, like 35, extraordinarily successful, you know. But what he's missing is he's like, yeah, dude, I just miss being an athlete and being surrounded by other athletes. And I miss, like, he's like, and this is going to sound weird because it doesn't compare to what you did. I miss like being in investment banking and it's 12 o'clock at night and it's me and the other analysts up trying to figure out this problem, and we're miserable and we haven't slept, but we're there and we're doing it. I'm like, no, dude, that's exactly the same. Different context, but same function. So it's not in a way, these events are providing that opportunity to like get back in that, and also like network, make friends, build relationships. I'm sure one of these events will probably birth some business. Like it already seemed like it was headed in that direction this past one. So it's just, it's getting ambitious people together.
Yeah, I mean, you're dropping all sorts of local service business ideas.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody about the ass.
Yeah. So American Snake Solutions, which is a snake spraying franchise coming to the United States, in the next 10 years, right? But somebody else has to be doing it because I'm lasering in on this.
American Snake Solutions.
Yeah,
I thought that was super interesting, though. I mean, the one dude has. What'd you say? It's just like him and a sprayer and a truck.
Yeah, it's just him and a sprayer and his truck. He's got like 250 clients that pay him anywhere from 150 to 250 per quarter. And he just buys all this stuff on Amazon. It's essential oils, mixes them together, waters it down, and then just goes and sprays people's lawns for snakes. And it actually works. I mean, I'm a proud paying customer because it actually works. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go down the rabbit hole of random service business ideas, which I do want to jump into at the end because I think you're someone who sees a lot of opportunities in a lot of different places. So let's save that towards the end. But why don't you just jump in and tell us a little bit about being a night stalker?
Okay. Anything specific about it or just generally?
No, I think for people who are listening to this who don't follow you on Twitter or don't know anything about you, like tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I joined ROTC in college because I needed a way to pay for college. I didn't join because I was like especially excited about going to war or anything like that, or serving my country or anything in specific that developed over time. But I needed a way to pay for college. ROTC seemed like a cool way to try it and do it. Always had somewhat of a military allure, so I did it. And towards the end, you got to compete for what you do in your military career. And the hardest thing to do is get into aviation. Army has mostly about 90% helicopters. And I said, okay, cool. That seems hard and fun. I might as well try for that. And if I don't get that, then maybe I'll get the next time. And I ended up getting it. Went to flight school, hated flying, hated flight school. Then my first duty, I did not do well in my flight school class. I was like very much towards the end of the list. And so I got the Black Hawk because depending on how you do in the list is the aircraft you get. Top 1 and 2 go and choose the gunships, the Apache, and then I got the Black Hawk. So I go to Germany, was there for 3 years, had the time of my life. skied, mountain biked, flew all over the place, fell in love with flying, fell in love with leading. I had 50 dudes in 8 aircraft that I was running for the majority of those 3 years. And yeah, it was amazing. It was so much fun. And towards the end of it, I thought to myself, well, this is really fun, but it's not quite challenging. And I need to do something that's a little bit more challenging if I'm really going to feel like I accomplished something here. And so there's a unit called the 160th. And the 160th is the military's, arguably the world's highest performing helicopter unit. And they service special operations only, exclusively. And there's a subunit within it that services exclusively to tier 1 organizations. And tier 1 organizations are really the top of the military food chain. And the 160th is essentially their air component. And I said, okay, cool. Let me go try and do that. And I had a commander at the time that told me that I wouldn't be a good fit and I probably wouldn't make it. But he'd write me a recommendation. And so I said, okay, cool. Fuck you very much. I'll go do it. And so I think I was like 25, flew back to the States for a week, went through the assessment, got in, and then got orders to go back, move to Tennessee, and go through their training pipeline, which is about a year long. So I moved back to Tennessee, and I started there what's called the Green Platoon. And Green Platoon is essentially a 9 to 12 month pipeline where they take, the new Night Stalker wannabe and put them through a insane course to develop them from a shitty pilot and average leader to really a uncommon flying operator. And halfway through the process, you find out what airframe you're going to go fly. And I knew I was going to go to the Black Hawk, but I didn't know if I was going to go fly Black Hawks that are assault aircraft or Black Hawks that are attack aircraft. And I was, in my mind, I was like, oh, I just want the assault. I don't really ever care to shoot anything or be that attack thing. I just want to bring people to a target. And they said, guess what? You're going to go fly the DAP, which is the gunship. It's called the DAP, which stands for Direct Action Penetrator, which, could really mean a number of things if you think about what a direct action penetrator could be. But in this context, it's take all the weapons from an Apache and strap them to a Black Hawk with a refueling probe, so you can take more ammo, more fuel, go longer distances, and shoot more things. And they said, you're going to go fly that. And I thought to myself, shit, this will be different. This will definitely be different. And there's a personality that goes with the DAP. They're kind of a redheaded stepchild of the organization, which very small. There's now only 10 of them in the world and a very select amount of pilots that fly them. We're talking like less than 20. And so I made it through the training pipeline, and I went over to the DAP hangar and began my 160th career. And there's a whole lot to unpack from like how that process and that training pipeline ties into what I do now. But the very core of it is that organization selects people based off of their attributes and their attitude, not their skill. And when I think about entrepreneurship, and when I think about business leaders, and I would think about those who really like crush and maybe those who don't, it comes down to like a real core set of attributes: tenacity, urgency, and integrity. And if you have those three, you can pretty much accomplish whatever you want, and you can learn the skills along the way. And that's the same way the 160th does what they do. And so then, yeah, day one, STAP pilot, and I got to start all over again from square one. New pilot, like, didn't mean shit to anybody. At that point, I had 35 guys and 6 aircraft that I was responsible for. And these are all dudes that, the dude that I shared a cubicle with had a Silver Star for getting shot in the leg during a Delta Force hostage rescue mission, and he kept flying with a tourniquet on his leg. He aerial refueled, kept flying, never stopped, never quit. And this is a dude that I was, quote unquote, in charge of. So I grew up very quickly. Those guys, over the course of the next, 5 years, those guys taught me everything. They taught me how to lead. They taught me how to fly. They taught me how to shoot. And it's when I really realized that leadership has very little to do with what you bring to the table, and more so what your team does for you. And if you have a team that's willing to work on you, then you will have every leadership opportunity that you want. And so, yeah, I spent that time deployed all over the place, all combat. So it was just basically deploying, training, and eventually got to the point where I was married. My wife was pregnant, one-on-one deployment. That was a little bit hairier, and I had already been considering getting out, but that really was just the final straw for us. And so I got out in April of 2021. So when I left the organization, by the time I left, I was the longest tenured officer to stay operational, like actually flying, not like doing some bullshit staff job. And I was one of 3 officers in the history of the unit to achieve a particular skill set level that's normally not granted to them. And I say all that to illustrate like the one point that I try to bring to every leader, and that's I didn't achieve any of that shit on my own. I achieved all that stuff because I had a really solid fucking team behind me that pushed me and put me in those positions that challenged myself. And I think a lot of what I'm doing now ties into that, where you have people in your corner, whether you're leading them or peers or whomever, if you have your tribe and you find your tribe and you push them and they push you, everybody wins. So
I love it.
That's me.
I love it. There's so many different areas I want to go with this. I think what I'd like to do is, rather than talk more specific stories, because I know you've shared some of those. You shared some of those at the event. Mm-hmm. We'll just say if you want to hear those stories, come join an Uncommon Elite event.
Yeah.
For right now, for this podcast, I'd love to dive into leadership. So
cool.
One thing you mentioned at the event, you came in with 350 flight hours.
Yep.
And then you quickly moved into a leadership position.
Yep.
How or why? What allowed you to do that?
Skills versus attributes. I mean, what allowed me to do that was I didn't have a choice. They just put me there. So that's the first thing. But what allowed me to excel was that I realized that my lack of flight experience had nothing to do with my ability to lead. And people get wrapped into that. Oh, well, shit, I don't have any flight hours, or I'm not that proficient as a pilot. And that's not what my guys didn't need me to be the expert in flying. They needed me to make decisions. And so I focused on making the right decisions and developing them as pilots. So here I was, this shitty pilot. I was surrounded by the best pilots in the world. I didn't need to be the best pilot in the world. I had them. I literally, in one 20 by 20 room, had 8 to 10 of the best helicopter pilots in the world. I did not need to be one of them. They needed me to take the intent of what we were trying to accomplish, get their buy-in, and make a fucking decision. And as soon as I figured that out, as soon as I figured out how to get that buy-in and how to make a decision in a way that was, not consensus, not groupthink, but like, what's the best idea that's applicable to what we're trying to accomplish, they then taught me how to fly. And so over the course of 3 years, I focused on their development, their performance, their training, them getting every resource they need, going out, removing any of the obstacles that were in the way of that, executing the mission, executing the plan. And in the background, really kind of unbeknownst to me, they were turning me into an exceptional pilot. And I think it's interesting to see, like when I see guys like come into this CEO role or this president role or any sort of leadership role, even if they have the skills, what now becomes more important is they're going out and building relationships and removing obstacles and setting their team up for success, not necessarily in there doing the actual thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so you get thrown right into the fire here. Sounds like there was a point in time that you had to maybe shift your mindset from I'm going to be an elite pilot, or I'm going to focus on being like the best at my craft on it being an actual pilot, versus I'm going to be someone who is in each and every team member's corner and help them.
That's exactly it. And that's where guys who don't make it, that's where officers who don't make it fail, is they come in and say, I'm going to be the best pilot in the world. So your team doesn't need that. Your team needs the best leader in the world. The team needs the best leader for them. And so you would see these guys who'd come in, and about the 6-month mark, it became very apparent to everybody that they were there to fly and not to lead. And so by that 8 to 10 month mark, they were out. And I lasted 4 years. And when I walked in and I realized who I was sitting next to in my little corner of the hangar, I was like, there ain't no fucking reason for me to be the best pilot in the world. I got him right here. And so I just focused on them, and I focused on the team. And in turn, they then gave some of their attention to me and built me up to that skill level without me even really fucking realizing it was happening.
So what are some specific ways you focused on the team or prioritized that?
Compassion. Even with a group of type A meat eaters, like as type A as they get, these guys needed some love that they hadn't been getting. They just had not. No one was actually in there thinking about them as an individual. They were thinking about them as an asset to the team. And so I just leaned into it. I became very close with a lot of them, and that quickly built the trust and respect that I needed to make the right decisions, or even if they disagreed with them. But really, man, it came down to just loving on these guys. But loving on them in a way where there was also a really clear expectation. So I call it sort of compassion with an axe. Like I came in with my heart, I led with my heart, I connected with them on an individual, but they also knew that there was a fine line of here's the expectation, and I'm not going to waver from it. So that was one way. But if I had to sum it up in a really dumbed down way, it's just treating people like people.
Yeah, and I remember you talking a lot about that at the event. Another thing that I see you do very well, and it shows in leading that event, was setting the expectations up front. So how are some ways that you consciously think about setting expectations?
Keep it as simple as fucking possible. Speak to the room. Speak to every member in the room. You get up and brief these missions, and it would be a group of 100 people, and there'd be generals, there would be all these really top talent dudes, and then there would be 18-year-old kids who were solely responsible for putting fuel in the aircraft. And so if you went and you spoke to the generals, you were going to miss the kid whose job is to put the fuel in the aircraft. Well, putting the fuel in the aircraft is really fucking important because you can't fly without it. So speaking to a group in a way that everyone can comprehend is one of the ultimate hacks that I took away from it. And also just being open to, like, you're not going to get it right, but you're not going to get it right, but you will figure it out. Like I shared with you guys, I had a very loose plan for this past weekend, extraordinarily loose plan. I had a set of workouts, a set of classes. I had an idea, a very strong idea. Let's say intent, a very strong intent of where I wanted to get everybody. So I had our starting point, I had wherever I wanted to get everybody, but the in-between was going to be driven by the dynamic of the group. So what we did on the first day, we were actually going to do on the second day. But what we realized quickly that first night was that we wanted to flip-flop everything so that there was a more gradual growth, and it wasn't as taxing, but more of like a familiarity stage where everybody was getting to know each other before we then really ramped it up. We also wanted to see how you guys were working as a team. So having a level of being dynamic in your approach, but understanding your intent and exactly where you want to get everybody, I think makes a really talented leader.
Do you think that that strategy applies? Well, maybe a better question is, did that specific strategy apply whenever you were briefing 100 people in the military?
Yeah. Yep. Now, there was definitely more definition in the plan because now you're talking about a lot of complexity. So there was a lot more definition in the plan that we were briefing to get everybody on board. But the differences there in those types of teams, specifically special operations, we know that you go launch for a mission, all of a sudden everything's going to change. I never had one mission go to a T. So it was always buying in on a plan and not the plan. I mean, the number of times I have had a mission change, like as soon as he took off the ground, like I can't think of a time it didn't. Honestly, cannot think of a time it didn't. So that flexibility in, all right, well, we know where we want to be. We know the 3 to 5 things we absolutely have to do, the no fails to get there. Now we just go figure it out. We have processes and contingencies to back us up. And now it's just a matter of acting on intent, not necessarily on a specific plan.
So a briefing in the military like that, you mentioned keeping it as simple as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like how long would one of those last?
If it was deliberate, like if we were planning to go do something on a specific date, it could be an hour and a half, it could be 2 hours. But if it was, oh shit, this just happened, we got to go, 30 seconds. I mean, I've been in a situation where you're just given a grid, the time to be there, and available fuel assets. So you had something to shoot, somewhere to be, and the fuel to go do it. And then we just went. So 30 seconds. I've seen 5 minutes, I've seen 10 minutes. Hour and a half for like really deliberate things, but look, you can sit in a room and talk about how you're going to do something for an hour and a half, and it's like you take off, like you just wasted an hour and a half.
So at the event, I shared with the group, well, actually, I won't spill the beans on what you asked it to do, but I shared with the group that public speaking is something I've always struggled with. And you shared a format for talking in front of people. And I want to make sure that I have it right because I've been thinking a lot about this. And what you shared was like, tell the people what you're going to talk about, why it's important, 3 supporting reasons, and wrap up with a conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. So people listen to the first 15 seconds and the last 15 seconds of what you have to say.
Mm.
So if you come in and say, here's what we're going to talk about, and you support it immediately with like, here's the 3 things I want you to take away and why it's important. And then you launch into the discussion, and then you close with, okay, here's what we talked about and why it's important. It's a very loose framework that allows you to go in with confidence, allows you to go in with like a punch and a headline and be like, this is what y'all are going to take away from this, and here's why. So already people are cued into, this is what it's about, and this is why it's important. Got it. Then you go into your narrative. You can talk for 5 minutes, you can talk for an hour, doesn't really matter. You can explain what you want. But if you come in with the energy of, hey, this is what we're going to talk about, this is why important, and here are the 3 reasons, here are the 3 things that we're going to discuss to support this, like, you are now setting the stage and you have everybody's attention. It's brevity. It's just a function of brevity. Have you heard the phrase, yes, be brief, be brilliant, be gone?
I haven't heard that phrase.
Yeah, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. So come in with what you're going to say it in a way that sticks, and then get the fuck out.
I like it. Yeah, and it's something I've observed and can tell that it's something you've practiced over and over again, and it is something that you are good at. And so that was a big thing I took away from the event, is just like tactical frameworks for how to get better at something that I had identified was a weakness of mine. The next thing I want to talk about, and you mentioned, is decision making. Your team was looking to you to make the decisions. What are some frameworks you use for decision making?
Have them make it for me. So I say that with slight jest. So I think I already alluded to this, but I was in a position where I was not the most talented aviator. I did not have the most deployments. I had the least amount of experience, technical experience, but inevitably I had to make a decision based off of the intent of where we wanted to go. So my approach, and this was what somebody else used on me when I was younger, was you come with a problem and 3 recommendations. And I then in turn, recognizing that I did not have the experience to make really solid recommendations, would have my guys come exactly with that. So problem statement, 3 recommendations. So there's a situation where, I'll give an example. So there's a situation where we had a really significant structural problem with the aircraft, and it was in all the aircraft. And it was to the point where it could potentially ground our aircraft, which is a huge fucking deal when the White House is counting on the handful of aircraft we have to go do something anywhere in the world anytime. And I don't know shit about engineering. I don't know crap about how these things are built, and I don't know how to fix them. And so we were presented with this situation where we had to make a decision, present a decision on what to do with very limited insights as to how we were going to get out of it. And so we found the right people who had the experience and could make a recommendation to come up with, you got option 1, option 2, and option 3. Here are the pros and cons to 1, the pros and cons to 2, pros and cons to 3. And of those 3, we think that option 2 is our best bet, and why. At that point, okay, so the experience and the skill and the knowledge is off our shoulder, and we're making a decision based off of, does it marry the intent of what we need to do? And I call it, the framework I use to call it is meet in 3. You've been to the South, right? You have the meet in 3 restaurants where you go in and it's just like a huge slab of some fucking slow roasted pot roast, and then 3 really often underwhelming sides. And really what you're getting is the meat, and it's supported by these sort of, suggestions. And it's like the braised the braised fucking green beans or, you know, barbecue beans and coleslaw, right? It's like nothing that spectacular. And you end up choosing like, end up eating the meat and just like dabbling in the fucking sides. Bonus points if there's banana pudding, but you got to do that right. And so I think of this as that. It's like, okay, you've got the problem. That decision needs to be, and here are the 3 options around it. Choose one and stick to it. And so my methodology was I would turn to my guys and be like, well, what the fuck do you think? Like, you've got the experience. And so I'd get their recommendation based off of their technical experience, and I would make a decision that vested with the intent and the expectation of what we were trying to do. Like, it's like, I'm trying to think of an example. That applies to home services.
You really want to go into the home services?
Well, no, I'm just thinking something relatable. I'm just thinking something relatable, right? I don't know.
He's bringing us back to American Snake Solutions.
Yeah, American. Yeah, like I don't know how to treat the snakes, but if I had American Snake Solutions, I'd go find the dude that knows how to come up with a concoction and treat it, and then make the decision based off his recommendation. So that was largely what I did, and then also a lot of buy-in. Getting buy-in is, I think, the best idea, the best way to select the best idea that meets the mission or whatever you're trying to accomplish, and do it in a way that you have everybody's support, whether they agree with you or not. And the way I think about that is these guys would come with recommendations based off their skill level, but what may be missing is how it marries up with the intent. And so it'd be like, all right, cool, Clark, great. That's a great, thank you for that. Or, hey, Joe, thank you for that as well. Or, hey, Parker, okay, thank you. Look, guys, these are all really good suggestions on how we can accomplish this, but it's missing this one component that I know to be true because I'm the one making the bigger decision. And so I would make the decision, and they'd be like, well, he considered my idea, he evaluated it, and he made a decision based off of the best available information and where we really need to go. Okay, cool. All right, thanks, Captain Ruf. Like, let's go fucking do it. Even though you completely disagree with me, I'm bought into the plan because I understand the process by which you went through to make a decision. And so buy-in is, I mean, if you want to be a very successful leader, getting the buy-in of your team will get you further than anything else.
What are some other ways you can get buy-in from your team?
Respect. I mean, respect is a very easy one. If you get your team to respect you, they will, 9 times out of 10, I'm not saying this is like definite across the board, they will trust your decision-making process to where even if they disagree with it, like they've got your back. So respect, consideration, at the end of the day, everybody just wants to have some sort of understanding that they've been not just heard, but listened to.
Okay, let's take respect.
Yeah.
How do you earn the respect of your teammates?
I was
going to say, especially as someone who comes in with 350 flight hours. Like, how do you earn that respect?
By respecting them first, by treating them like people. That could be anywhere from going and doing the dirty shit that isn't within your role, tying up the aircraft, sweeping the fucking hangar floor, filling the fridge. I was technically the second highest ranking officer in my little unit. So everybody except for one person reported to me, but that didn't keep me from going down and sweeping the hangar. It didn't keep me from going and filling the fridge with Coors Light. It didn't keep me from like making sure there was always coffee. tying up the aircraft after a flight instead of just like going into the hangar and going home so they could go finish, you know, wiping everything and fixing everything. And so it's just having the urgency to go in and do the things that the rest of your team is doing in a way that's balanced, because yeah, sure, there's other shit you have to do too, but not pushing it out of your scope. I think about this. Okay, so think about this one time. We had this guy come fly with us. He wanted to be in our organization. I think he was in a staff position at the time, but he wanted to come over and fly with us. And so we go out flying. I'm flying with him. We go out flying, come back, park the aircraft, shut down. He fucking gets his stuff and goes. Doesn't offer to tie up the aircraft, doesn't thank the crew chiefs, doesn't ask the crew chiefs if there's anything that he can help with or move inside the hangar. He just grabs his bag and goes in like it was some fucking valet. And I went to my commander after that, and I was like, sir, no fucking way. And he was like, why? And as I shared the example with him, he's like, okay, that's easy. And dude never made it over. He could be the best pilot in the world. He could have been the fucking new era Chuck Yeager of flying special operations helicopters, but he did not have the time or the patience or the care to like do the little things, and so he never made it. I had a guy take a sandwich. I had an officer take a sandwich from one of the crew chiefs. Forgot to pack his lunch. Forgot to pack his lunch. We're flying long distance, and he asked one of the crew chiefs if he can have half of his lunch. I was like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" So he was gone. Never be in a position to take from the men. I mean, that's a quote from Band of Brothers. Like that's not just something. It's like never put yourself in a position where you can take from these men. And that guy did that, and he was gone.
Where's the balance as a leader on doing those little things, but also not setting the wrong expectations with, because like whoever's responsible for, I don't know who's responsible for sweeping the floor, or I don't know whose job duty that is on the team in your scenario. But if you're sweeping the floor every single night for that person, then like where's the balance between setting the wrong expectations with like you're going to be filling that role for that person versus, hey, I'm just like, I see that this person is tied up fueling the aircraft right now, and like I think sweeping the floor is just like one example of it, right?
Yeah,
yeah. But do you understand where my question is going? Like,
I do, and it's very hard to find. And of course, I'll come back with you like it's dependent. But I think where you find it is where you as a leader understand where is the time that you need to spend and identify where you're out removing the obstacles that the rest of the team doesn't see. Because look, the crew chiefs don't necessarily understand what the officers are doing to go make the organization better. It's just not within their scope. Same as I don't really understand how you change the fucking oil on the engine in the Black Hawk. It's just not my scope, but I'm willing to go and do it, and I can go and figure it out because it's more of like a skill. So finding the balance is very delicate, and I think it's constantly shifting. I think it's always shifting. And I think there is a understated way to communicate it so that the guys know. It's not like, look, guys, of course I haven't been down here. I've been doing all this shit. You guys just want to understand. That's not the way to go about it. The way to go about it is to, with cadence, communicate to the team, here are the things that we're working on that you may not be privy to, but I'm going to share them with you so you have some understanding. And that will that will tie everybody in. They'll tie everybody in the division. It'll tie everybody into what's going on. And there's not that, well, what the fuck is going on? Everybody with their hands up in the air. And at the same time, it demonstrates to the team, like, yo, guys, like, of course I want to come down and sweep the hangar floors with you, but we're working on prepping for this operation overseas. That's really like, we got to go and figure that out right now. And then they're like, okay, cool. Got it. Yeah, that's the question I was asked. The one guy, he asked that, and I know he struggles with it a lot because he's trying to get in front of everything, but his team doesn't necessarily see that, or they don't understand it. So it's I think it's something that is a constant effort applied over time, creates an awareness at every level of the organization of like, yeah, Christian's going to come in and sweep the floors when he can, but in the meantime, he's like working on these very higher level things that are more not intellectual, but they're more critical thinking and not necessarily like in there changing the oil.
All right, so you're working with business leaders right now. You're working with executives. What are some of the most important things that you've identified in the business world that guys are either asking you about or that you identify in the business world that needs to be addressed to start working on becoming a better leader? Like, what are some things?
Yeah, clear expectations. Delegation. Everybody wants to delegate, get stuff off their plate so they can play at a higher level. But with delegation comes setting really clear expectations. And with really clear expectations comes creating and assigning the processes and SOPs that drive hitting that expectation. So everybody is like, yeah, I want to delegate this, I want to delegate this, I want to elevate up, and that's fine, and you should do that, and everybody will reach a point where they need to, but communicating in a way where the expectation is crystal clear is something I see guys miss all the time. Yeah, I'm like, oh, well, okay, they didn't do that. Okay, you delegated to them, but they didn't do it to the way. Did you set a clear expectation? No. Okay. So that's definitely one of them. See what else. Meetings. Meetings are huge. I love a good meeting. I do. A really good one. It starts on time, it ends on time, it has an agenda, and the right people are there. And the amount of companies and teams I see mess this up and the amount of time that they waste is extraordinary. Just extraordinary.
Okay, so like if you were to tell somebody how to run a meeting, how would you do
that? I would just say, go get the book Traction, EOS. I think there's a lot of good things about EOS. I think there's a lot of lacking things about EOS, but it's a really good place to start. And I use that meeting structure. It's called the Level 10 90-minute meeting structure for all of my teams and all my executives because it works. There's a couple tweaks I do, but it just works. And it's really easy to understand and execute. So hands down, go get the book Traction, read it, take what you will out of it. But if you take one thing, take that meeting structure, and if you can crush that, you can crush everything else.
What are some other, what's some other low-hanging fruit for business, either entrepreneurs, business owners who want to become better leaders?
Instant performance feedback.
What do you mean by
that? Giving feedback to your team members instantaneously. Not waiting for like a 90-day review, not waiting for an annual review, not waiting a week when something is good or something is bad. It goes both ways, positive and, more critical. Giving feedback in a manner where it addresses a success or an issue right off the fucking bat. Letting it linger to like the next performance review is a sure way for change to never happen. Because by that time, it's in the past. also a sure way to not give your team or individuals the reinforcement they need to keep doing something well. Call it out. Hey, you did this well. Thank you. Or, hey, you messed this up. Next time, what do you think is a different approach? Well, they may spew something off, and at that moment, it becomes a little bit of like a coaching session where the leader is coaching the individual on how they can then do something better or to the expectation the next time. I think that is vastly underused. We never waited. It was never like I had a crappy flight and then a week later my instructor told me I had a crappy flight. He was telling me in the cockpit while we were doing it so that the next time I did the maneuver, I could do it better instantaneously.
So just immediately addressing anything that is out of line.
Yeah. I had once had an instructor throat chop me. We were, it was one of my earlier days flying the DAPS of the gunship, and I was pressing the target. I was getting too close. Like I was shooting very, very close, and we got close, but this was getting too close. And I just remember him. He just fucking took his arm, whacked me across the aircraft, like in the throat. He said, Christian. He said, sir, because I technically outranked him. He's like, sir, if you ever fucking do that again, I will land this thing and strangle you. And I was like, understood. Never did it again. Now, that was a little harsh. But when when the stakes are that high, he wasn't going to be like, hey, sir, could you please reconsider? So it worked. That's a very violent example, and I don't recommend that. But I never made that mistake again.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it's sort of like, and now we're going to get into a way different parenting conversation. It's like spanking your child, right? I don't know if you agree or disagree with it, but I was spanked as a kid, and I very quickly understood what I should and should not be doing. And it's like, I'll take this back to just like sports or football or in the military. It's like, I think that's what I miss is that like quick feedback on, dude, if I ran a route the wrong way, or like you can easily just get blasted by a safety.
Yeah.
If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Right. Oh, and that's just a small little example, but I love the feedback mechanism of address it quick. And now I think you have to be a little more delicate in the business world, right?
Yeah, you do. You do. But the premise is like you give feedback at the event.
Yeah, and that's a great word.
Yeah.
That is a great word.
Please don't chop your people.
Yeah, for sure. Or yeah. Yeah, we won't go down that rabbit hole. We're at the hour mark here, so I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners just in regards to leadership?
Yeah, go find a peer group. Go find people to push you. I learned leadership from my guys, but I also learned leadership from the guys I was doing it with. So I always had one or two individuals who are at my level who were trying to figure it out at the same time. And finding those people to be like, hey, I'm having this issue, having that sounding board that isn't necessarily a level up from you or a level like down from you, below you, whatever you want to call it, in the chain. Yeah, go find those people.
Uncommon Elite, right?
Yeah, Uncommon Elite, or just fucking, I found it just reaching out to people. Like, I'm very active on Twitter. I just found it reaching out to people on Twitter. I've found that like there are other coaches in the space who, they won't be on my team just by the virtue of like different backgrounds, but like I go and confide in them and they do the same, or we just like fucking figure it out together.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of wrap this up, now that we're back on the Uncommon Elite topic, let's we were texting yesterday, kind of brainstorming some ideas for that Telluride event?
Yeah, I think I got to figure out how to book it today, and we'll just figure out a way to fill it.
Does that one have a gym?
It does not, no. The one I sent you does have a gym. Do you want one with a gym?
I think it'd be cool to incorporate some sort of daily workout.
Yeah, because we could just bring gym equipment and we're doing it outside.
Yeah.
The one I'm looking at now is like a giant deck overlooking the mountains. So there'll be no one will suffer for a cool place, and I can bring enough kettlebells to keep everybody happy.
Sweet. I'm all down with that. How much about this do you want to share? Are you going to keep it? Are you going to keep the events like pretty hush hush going in, kind of like we did going in on this one?
Oh, like what's going to go on during the
Yeah.
event? Yeah, it's very. This one may take I think the one we're going to do in July will probably take a different approach. It's longer.
Okay.
So I think it's more of like the dates I'm looking at are from like the 21st to the 27th. So this would just be people are going to have to work. Like there's going to have to be periods, and that's that week where people are probably going to have to be doing stuff. So I think of it more of like almost like a co-working opportunity with the twist of what we do. It just happens to be in a beautiful spot.
Yeah. And then per our conversation too, I think that will be a very important one, especially on the week-long events.
Yeah.
Like there can be blocked out time to still chip away at work, but then you're focusing on incorporating physical challenges, mental challenges on the front and back end of each day.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I think the core of what we're going to do is with most of the events is like a 4-day thing, but this would just be a slightly different approach.
Sweet. All right. Well, we'll save the service business idea conversation for later.
Yeah, for the next one.
maybe you just have to come to an Uncommon Elite event to get all of Christian's ideas and maybe potentially buy a domain from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening to the Owner Operator Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Austin Gray. This is Christian Ruf with Uncommon Elite. If you guys like these episodes, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, make sure to follow, like the podcast. And if you wouldn't mind, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But Christian, thanks so much for being on.
You bet, man. Thanks for having me.